pitch. Ball line to Yount. It's short. He throws. It's over. The Brewers have won the American League pennant. Milwaukee, you have a World Series. Thousands of people streaming onto the field at County Stadium. It is absolute pandemonium. They're surrounding the Brewers. They have defeated the California Angels 3-2, and they now go to the World Series. Absolutely fabulous.
One more time set, and here comes the 2-2 pitch to Edgar Martinez down. A fastball swung on hit the deep center field. Bernie Williams goes back and get out the line, Brandon. Mustard this time, Grandma. Here's a grand salami, and the Mariners lead it 10-6. I don't believe it. My, oh my.
From high atop the Robinson Gearing Studio Complex and straight out of God's country, Pawleys Island, South Carolina, the Let's Talk Baseball Podcast Network proudly presents Backwards K Pod. And now, here's the host of the show, Jake Robinson.
Good moment, baseball universe. What is up? Once again, back is the incredible, the incomparable Jake the Snake Robinson from the Let's Talk Baseball Podcast Network. Half man, half podcast machine. Back in the Captain Kirk chair. Shields down, photons up. Prepare to engage on this week's digital audio program that I call Backwards K Pod, where we collect ball players and their stories. I want to welcome all of you in this week, from the OG Seamhead all the way down to, that, righteous virginal pod surfer who just happened to kind of stumble onto what I got going on here. And here's the deal, folks. I'm so proud of all the feedback that I have received from all the shows. I've been in discussion with Podbean, and it looks like I will be coming back for another season in January, and there is a lot of exciting maneuvering going on behind the scenes to make this second season even more successful. However, there is one thing that will not change, like ever. I'm going to continue to come through every Tuesday, all 52 of them, with that free baseball smoke. I'm never going to send you a bill for the content in today's busted-ass economy. No Patreon, no crowdsourcing. I'll take care of all the bills around here. All I need from you, my beautiful baseball-minded audience, is for you to smash those follow, download, share, and subscribe icons and hook a good brother up. If you're on Apple or Spotify, please remember to rate and review me as you see fit. I ain't scared. I do what I do when I do it, and I do it better than anybody else. Facts. Truth is, look, I hate to ask my audience for anything. I feel like I'm doing you a service. I shouldn't ask you for shit, but I figure a rate and a review for me is better than me charging you a monthly bill. Rates, reviews, downloads, shares, subscriptions, any type of comments. All these things help me to continue to do what I love more than anything in the world, and that's talk baseball. Because we're all here for a particular reason and path. You don't even need to know the curriculum to know that you are part of the math. That's why I expose my soul to the globe, the world. I'm trying to leave something for these boys and girls. I can't stop. That's why I'm hot. Determination, motivation, dedication. I'm talking to you of my many inspirations when I say I can't let myself or you down. If I were in the highest clip on the highest rip and you slipped on the side and you clinched into your life by my grip, I would never, ever let you down. And when my life dims, remember my hymns come from him. It's my words are confirmed by the grace of God. I do dream in color and in pods. One of a kind like ace over king full house, because whenever I open my heart, my soul, or my mouth, a touch of baseball rains out. And with that being said, it's time to get on this week's topic. That catcher is coming down. I'm calling all aboard. And I'm really excited about this week. This week I'm going to be speaking on the 1982 Milwaukee Brewers, or as they were affectionately called, Harvey's Wallbangers. In 1982, the Brewers had reason to be optimistic. They reached the expanded playoffs during the 81 strike year, only to lose to the eventual American League champions that year, the New York Yankees. They were stacked in vets and put in their pretty much everyday lineup. And that was, as well as the pitching rotation and that bullpen. This was, without a doubt, the best team in the Brewers had fielded in their young 13-year franchise history. And to be honest, folks, it's still the best team the Brewers have ever put together. And going into this 82 season for the Brewers and their fans, it really did feel like a now or never situation for that team. They were an amazing bunch of characters that simply put, they hit the piss out of the ball. The nucleus of that 82 team was a group of players that the Brewers mostly drafted and developed in their farm system. The two offensive stars of the organization were clearly future Hall of Famers, Paul Molitor and Robin Yount. Now, Molly played for Milwaukee, 15 of his 21-year playing career, while Yount would spend his entire 20-year career with the Brew Crew. And between the two of them, they collected 6,461 hits in a Brewers uniform, and 411 of them would come in that 1982 season. So let me see here. Just to, set the foundation here. You know how I like to do. I'm going to give you the career stats of these two guys right here. They're definitely worth it. And let's lead it off, of course, with Paul Molitor. And a side note here, I consider the 1980s like the age of the leadoff hitter. You had Ricky, Molitor, Tim Raines, Willie Wilson, Steve Sachs, Al Bumry, Vince Coleman, Chuck Knobloch, and it was an exciting time of high OBPs and stolen bases from the dudes at the top. And as far as I'm concerned, Molitor is probably the third greatest leadoff hitter that I ever saw. I would have to put Ricky at the top, just slightly ahead of Tim Raines, and then I would put Molitor in there. But I digress. He played third base, 5.6 wins, a bump replacement, 160 games, 751 plate appearances, 666 at-bats with 201 hits, 136 runs scored, 26 doubles, 8 triples, 19 home runs, 71 RBI, 41 stolen bases. He was only caught 9 times. Now, as far as I'm concerned, that's efficiency. 41 thefts, only 9 times caught. That's only 3 innings of outs. I can live with that. 93 strikeouts and 69 walks. 300 total bases. He had a 302, 366, 450 slash, 816 OPS, and a 129 OPS plus. He led the league in plate appearances, at-bats, runs, and he was also 12th in MVP voting that year. 1982, Paul Molitor. I find it interesting that in 751 plate appearances, he only grounded into 9 double plays. And Paul Molitor was a problem in the American League during that 1982 season. The number 2 hitter, Robin Yount. He was the thunder to Paul Molitor's flash, while Molly was, a genuine problem. Robin was the final solution. He fit so well in the team. He had long blonde locks. He was still young, spitting vinegar. Had a bushy mustache. but he was a stone-cold killer. The kind of ball player in 1982 who would look you in your eye, rip your heart out, laughing while he's doing it. So, check out these numbers. 1980-82 shortstop Robin Yount, a 9.8 WAR. AL MVP, Gold Glove winner, 156 games played. 704 plate appearances, 635 at-bats, 210 hits, which led the American League. His 46 doubles were the most in the American League that year, 12 triples, 29 home runs, 114 RBI, 14 stolen bases, only 3 times caught. Again, I can live with 1 inning of outs to 14 thefts. 54 walks, only 63 strikeouts, 367 total bases. That was the best in the American League, as was his slugging percentage. He had a 957 OPS and a 166 OPS plus, with a slash line of 331, 379, 578. And I honestly think that because Yount would eventually move to center field, I think we forget how great he truly was as a shortstop on both sides of the ball. And, of course, the team's aptly nicknamed Harvey's Wallbangers. They did what their nickname said. They could just flat out rake at historic levels. And I would be remiss if I didn't PowerPoint my way through this offense for you a little bit here. And I can hear a few of you now scratching your head asking, did he just say historic levels? And yes, I did. Using an adjusted OPS, which basically adjusts on-base percentage and slugging percentages for the park and the era, you can see that the 82 Brewers were the 5th most statistically potent single-season offense in the history of baseball, behind only the 1927, 1930, and 1931 Yankees and the 2017 Houston Astros. First baseman, Cecil Cooper. He was the 3rd 300 hitter in that lineup. Smooth swinging left-hander who he belted 32 home runs, drove in 121 runs that year, and route to a 313, 342, 530 slash, and a 142 OPS plus. He also came in 5th in AL MVP voting. And I should also mention that Cooper played a fantastic Gold Glove caliber defense. He was kind of like this poor man's American League Keith Hernandez type. So, for those keeping score, Yount wins MVP, Cooper places 5th, and Molitor comes in 12th. And back in 1980, 2 years before the season, the Brewers made the greatest trade in that franchise's history when they sent Sisto Lexicano, David LaPointe, and Larry Sorensen to the St. Louis Cardinals for 2 future Hall of Famers, closer Raleigh Fingers, switch hitting catcher Ted Simmons, as well as pitcher Pete Vukovich. And all 3 of those players had a tremendous impact on that 1982 team. Fingers and Vuk, I'll hit on them in a bit, but Simba, Ted Simmons here, he was just another one of these offensive pieces that was hard to contain. 23 home runs, 97 ribs that year in 82. Now, the outfield, it had 2 huge power bats in the outfield. Left-handed swinging all-star Ben Ogilvy, 34 dongs, 102 ribs. And center fielder Gorman Thomas, who was seemingly always making Birdie the Brewer, take that frothy slide down that board. He dropped 39 dogs, drove in 112. Ogilvy was like this streaky bat, but had like this frightening home run capability. While Stormer Gorman, he was kind of like the Adam Dunn of his day, a one-dimensional power beast who could break your heart at the bottom of that order. Not to mention they had guys like right fielder Charlie Moore, who was the team's catcher until Milwaukee traded for Simba, and he moved to the outfield. Jim Gantner at second base. He had a 295, 335, 369 slash in 1982, as well as veteran Don Money, whose, 4-time All-Star career was winding down. He gave up his third base position to Paul Molitor a few seasons before, and he was acquiescing second base to Gantner full-time now. He still had one strong season left in his tank as he played the designated hitter position. He had 16 home runs, 55 RBI, 284, 360, 531 slash, and a 148 OPS plus. Offensively, the 1982 Milwaukee Brewers were first in runs with 891, first in home runs, first in slugging, total bases, OPS, second in hits, doubles, batting average. Truly one of the greatest single-season American League offenses of any era that doesn't get any recognition, as far as I'm concerned. Now, the pitching, on the other hand, it was a whole different story. It was middle of the pack, mediocre at best, until a trade put them over. In 1982, 15 different men took the bump for Milwaukee. If you nullify Doug Jones and Chuck Porter, who pitched in 7 games combined that year out of the Bully, that leaves just 13 pitchers to account for over 99% of the team's innings pitched that year. So while they weren't the most dominant staff in the history of baseball, they had chemistry, they remained healthy, relatively speaking, and there wasn't really like a lot of moving parts of the staff. And that may have been like a strength for that team, even though it wasn't a dominant staff. The majority of the starts, they went to Mike Caldwell, Pete Vukovich, Moose Haas, Bob McClure, Randy Lurch. And, all right, let's break it down. Only Caldwell and Vukovich, they had an ERA better than the league average. Only Moose Haas had like a respectable strikeout-to-walk ratio we look for today. Mike Caldwell had been sometimes brilliant, but an equally inconsistent, frustrating pitcher with the Giants and the Padres. He struggled that first year in Milwaukee in 1977, but he was a true badass in 1978. He went 22-9 with 23 complete games, 6 shutouts, and a 2.36 ERA. And in any other year, that would have been Cy Young type numbers. But, you know, you got to remember here, 1978, Ron Guidry was out of his mind that year. He posted a 25-3 record and a 1.75 ERA. So Caldwell will come in second that year. Now, the ace of the rotation was Cy Young winner Pete Vukovich. And while he was an effective starter, he was 6th in the AL in ERA, 24th in strikeouts. He surrendered the second most walks in the league, as well as the 13th highest OBP against. But Vuk, you know, he led the AL in wins, which was the sexiest pitching stat around before metrics, and he played for division winners. His 1.50 whip is by far the highest whip by any Cy Young winner. And honestly, after I crunched the numbers of that year, you know, the way we do it today with analytics and metrics, I would have voted Jim Palmer or Dave Steve. I probably would have voted Dan Quisenberry before I gave it to Vuk. And I'm not here to shit on Mr. Vukovich. I truly mean no disrespect if you're listening to this right now. But facts is facts, right? Thank God for metrics and analytics. This way of looking at stats back in the day, it's truly antiquated. I hear people piss and moan about analytics all the time. But right here, the proof is in the pudding. And Vuk, as a 1982 Cy Young, I don't know, it's not good, but it ain't as bad as Steve Bedrosian for the Phillies in 1987, so I can live with it. The funny thing is, Pete Vukovich, he's probably way better known as a loudmouth Yankee slugger, Clu Haywood, from the hit baseball comedy classic movie Major League. He's probably more known for being that character than being a Cy Young hurler. But Vuk was one hell of a baseball character. His hair was big and unkempt. He wore a goatee when, you know, many guys in that time, they did not. He looked like he wore the same uniform since the start of the season, and it hadn't been washed, like, you know, ever. And add to this his crazy facial expressions and his tendency to bring that high cheese real tight. And Vuk was probably one of the more intimidating pitchers of the 80s now when I think back about, you know, think on it. The Brewers did have a future Hall of Famer, 1981 Cy Young Award winner as their closer in Raleigh Fingers. And Fingers was really good in 1982. Not quite as dominant as the 81 season, but still 29 saves, 50 appearances, 71 strikeouts, and 79 2/3 innings pitched. 318 batters faced, 2.60 ERA, 1.04 WHIP, and 147 ERA plus. And as I mentioned, Fingers was acquired from St. Louis when he became expendable with the presence of Bruce Sutter. Fingers was acquired by St. Louis just 4 days before shipping him out to Milwaukee. And he had come over in a deal with San Diego. So, in essence, that trade, it was a 1980s version of a play dump for Whitey Herzog and the Cards. Behind Raleigh, there wasn't too much to get excited about in the bully. Jim Slayton provided some spot starts, long relief. And then after that, you had like this hodgepodge of guys like Dwight Bernard, Jerry Augustine, eating up chunks of innings with, let's be honest, mediocre results. In early September, Fingers was lost in the season with an arm injury, leaving the closer duties to a closer by committee deal. And that would have an impact on that team in the future. And again, I'm not here to bash anyone, just giving the raw numbers and details. The greatness of that lineup, it masked a pitching staff that was, quite honestly, decent at best. And the truth is, the winning, it didn't start right away, though. And coming into the 1982 season, as I said earlier, there were many high hopes and World Series aspirations for the Brewers. But there was a 5-game losing streak in mid-April. On May 10th, the Brewers began a stretch of 7-14 baseball against the AL West opponents. By June 1st, their record stood at 23-24, and they are sitting in 6th place of the 7-team American League East. That's right. That's how long ago this is. Back when Milwaukee was in the American League East. Boy, oh boy, I'm old. The only saving grace is that AL East leaders at that time, the Tigers and the Red Sox, they were clearly not long-term contenders. The only team in the East to give them pause were the Baltimore Orioles. With Milwaukee 7 games back at 23-24, the front office of GM Harry Dalton and owner Bud Selig, they fired Buck Rogers. Harvey Kuenn, the batting coach, was elevated to top dog, and immediately, the Brewers' season turned around. And just a side note here on Kuenn. Kuenn became a Brewers coach in 1972. He even served as an interim manager for the club back in 1975. In the mid-70s, Kuenn suffered many debilitating and life-threatening medical conditions. He had surgery on his stomach and his heart. And in February of 1980, he had his right leg amputated just below his knee after a blood clot there. It cut off his circulation. And look, I want to be honest with you, as an 11-year-old kid till now, I never knew he only had one leg. That's amazing that a one-legged batting coach can command the respect of world-class hitters, like Yount, Molitor, Simba, Cooper, Ogilvy, Thomas, Money, Gantner. And these guys, they loved Harvey. I saw an interview with Robin Yount where he says, overnight, the team bought into what Harvey was selling, and they were willing to do whatever they had to do to win for that man. On June 10th. Oh, and by the way, I actually Googled that because I wanted to be sure. I didn't want to come on here and say that guy didn't have a leg when he did. And I looked it up. They actually have his fake leg hanging in a bar somewhere in Milwaukee. Google that. Check it out. True story. I never knew that. All those times I saw him on the field, I'm an 11-year-old kid. I never knew that. On June 10th, the Brewers started a 20-8 stretch, and the offense was now nicknamed Harvey's Wallbangers. by the All-Star break. They are white hot, 48-35, tied with Boston for first place. Predictably, Detroit had faded out, while the Orioles, the most feared long-term threat, was coming on strong and sitting at 3.5 games out. The Brewers, though, they stayed consistent through August, going 19-11 into Labor Day, and still holding a 3-game advantage over Baltimore, while the Brewers' offense continued to beat the piss out of the ball. The biggest development for the team in September, it actually came on the pitching side. Now, one good and one horribly bad thing. First off, I always like to hear the bad news first, right? The team lost fingers. I already told you about this. Raleigh had been developing elbow problems in late August. By early September, he's headed for the DL. And there was always like these optimistic reports that he might be back by the postseason should the Brewers make it, but it never happened. And really, that arm injury, ineffectively, it pretty much ended his career. On a positive note, though, the Brewers packaged up 3 prospects, sent them to Houston in exchange for another future Hall of Famer, Don Sutton, the former Dodgers superstar pitcher who was tooling away in obscurity with the Astros and paid immediate dividends for Milwaukee. He went 4-1 in 7 starts for the Brewers with a 3.29 ERA. And the Brewers, well, they needed that help. As the rapidly closing in Orioles are nipping at the Brewers' heels, the Red Sox faded out in September. The Brewers still hold a 3-game lead, but there are 7 games versus the Orioles on deck for the next 10 days. It all started with a 3-game series at County Stadium in Milwaukee. Baltimore touched Sutton up in the first inning of the opener. They scored 4 runs, but Yount, who was always an Oriole killer to my dismay. I mean, that guy used to just brutalize the Birds. He lost a 2-run blast in the bottom half to cut the lead in half. The Brewers scored a third to tie it, and then scored 4 runs in the 5th, and they would eventually win 15-6. And yeah, those Brewers, they sure seemed to hit when something was on the mound against the Orioles. We'll revisit that in a bit. On Saturday, the O's again scored 4 runs in the first, and this time there was no comeback as the Orioles took the middle game and the rubber match on Sunday as well. And the Brewers' lead was now down to 2 games. Milwaukee went on their final road trip. They took 2 and 3 from the Boston Red Sox in Fenway, and now it would come down to 4 games set with the Orioles to close out the season. With the Brewers clinging to a 3-game lead in the East, Milwaukee would need to win just 1 game to clinch the divisional title. Memorial Stadium, home of the Orioles, the world's largest outdoor insane asylum. It was a madhouse. The Orioles fans are waving brooms. They're looking for the sweep. It was also announced that this would be Orioles manager Earl Weaver's last year at the helm. So the Orioles and the fans, they were highly motivated to, watch the Birds steal Milwaukee's divisional lead here. And the Brewers came out flat. They looked like a deer caught in the headlights from the jump. In this playoff pressure-like atmosphere, Friday was a doubleheader, and both Caldwell and Vukovich fell behind early and lost to the surging Orioles. In Game 3, Doc Medic was hammered, and before you know it, the Brewers had lost the first 3 games of this series to the Orioles by a combined score of 26-7. And it would all come down to 1 game. Winner takes all, game number 162. This had to happen only once in the history of baseball. The 1949 race between the Red Sox and the Yankees. The 1982 showdown on paper promised to be even better, as 2 future Hall of Famers, Jim Palmer and Don Sutton, were set to do battle. With the Weaver retirement impending and playing as like this back storyline, the Brewers, they had a lot to overcome. And you can enter Orioles killer Robin Yount at this point. I mean, I it still leaves me speechless all these years later. He homered off Palmer in the first inning, opposite field. He added another home run to left center field in the third. And in the eighth, he bashes a triple and he scores. And the Brewers held a 5-1 lead at that point with Sutton pitching masterfully.
In the air to right. Wire to the corner. To the wall. Home run for Robin Yount, lifted to the off field. And the Brewers break on top. And that is a very important factor to consider. Because in the series here in Baltimore against the Orioles, the Brewers have been in the position of having to come from behind, way behind, and couldn't play their game.
Well, as we look at this home run again, it's a vivid evidence of why Yount is so highly regarded for the MVP. His power is to all fields. Remember,
and since May 25, when he came back as a starter, that ball is well hit, deep left field. It's gone, and Robin Yount has hit successive home runs off Jim Palmer, and Milwaukee leads 3-0.
And he has hit the home runs in the very manner we talked about. One to right field, the opposite field. This one deep up the left center alley. Extraordinary power for a shortstop. Let's look at it again. And this pitch will be upstairs, right in his groove. He got around on it. There was no question about it. And they are hitting Jim Palmer.
And it's funny, as I sit here and I listen to this, you know, I just, it just brings back so many memories. And Robin Yount was just, he was just such a beautiful baseball player to watch. He really was. And I got to be honest with you, though, I'm listening to Howard Cosell, you know, basically call the demise of my 1982 summer, and it's still painful. It's still painful to hear it. But look, I always respected this Milwaukee Brewers team. I never really hated them. In the bottom of the eighth, with 2 outs and runners on the corner, Orioles catcher Joe Nolan, he pinch hits a low line drive into left field and looks certain to plate those 2 runs, but Ogilvy slides in the frame first, and he made the catch right on the foul line. The rally was turned back, and the Brewers would administer the final nails in the coffin as they erupted for 5 more runs in the top of the ninth to put the Orioles down for good in game 162 by the score of 10-1. But the Brewers' sense of drama didn't stop there, as they were set to face the AL West champion California Angels for the right to move on to the World Series. Milwaukee, they would drop the first 2 games in the best-of-5 series, but they would become the first team to clinch a 3-out-of-5 LCS after being down the first 2 games, as they won 3 in a row, the last 2 at County Stadium. And the pennant would be clinched when Cecil Cooper hit a 2-run single in the 7th to turn a 3-2 deficit into a 4-3 win. And for the first and only time, the Milwaukee Brewers were headed to the World Series to face the Cardinals.
California led 3-1 after 3.5. Then Ogilvy homered in the 4th inning to make it 3-2. It has stayed that way since the 4th inning. The bases are loaded. The pitch to Cooper. Base hit, left field, a liner. 1-run home. Counting slow, coming on. Gantner slides. He's safe. The Brewers lead 4-3. Cooper delivers. Wow, what a big 2-out hit by Cecil. 4-3 Milwaukee. On Luis Sanchez. A bases loaded line drive to left. Listen to this crowd at County Stadium.
And that hit right there, ladies and gentlemen, would clinch that division. Would be the nail in the coffin against the California Angels. And now the Milwaukee Brewers and the St. Louis Cardinals are set to match up in the 1982 World Series. It was coined the Sud Series on account of St. Louis and Milwaukee being known for their beer brewing industries. The Brewers That year, it hit 216 home runs, while the Cards had only hit 67 as a team, and that's fewer than Ogilvy and Thomas combined. The Cards had built their reputation and team on solid pitching, exceptional defense, and aggressive run manufacturing offense in a style that would be called Whitey Ball after Herzog. The loss of fingers from Milwaukee, it may have been the difference though. In Game 1, the Brewers would pound Cards starter Bob Force, beating the Cards 10-0. Mike Caldwell pitched a complete game, allowing only 3 hits. The Brewers' offense was led by Paul Molitor, who had a World Series record 5 hits and 2 RBIs. Robin Yount added 4 more hits and 2 ribs himself, while former Cards catcher Ted Simmons dropped dong. And Jim Gantner had a 2-run triple himself. In Game 2, the Cards tied up with a 5-4 victory. The Brew Crew again drew first blood behind RBIs from Charlie Moore and Robin Yount. And Ted Simmons' second home run of the series and put the Brewers up 3-0 in the top of the third. But the Cards would cut that lead to 1 in their half of the third when Tom Herr knocked in rookie Willie McGee, and third baseman Ken Okerfield drove in Herr with a single. The Brewers made it 4-2 in the fifth when a Cecil Cooper single drives in Robin Yount, who had doubled earlier. Cardinals catcher Darrell Porter, he would tie it in the sixth with a 2-run RBI double. And then in the top of the eighth, the effects of not having fingers around in the bully it's starting to be felt. With 1 out, Pete Ladd is pressed into service as the closer. He walks Lonnie Smith to load the bases. Then he walked pinch hitter Steve Braun to force in the go-ahead run, 5-4. And it could have been much worse as the next batter, McGee, lined out to short for out number 2. And Ozzie Smith, it looked like he had a pair base hit. He hit the runner, Steve Braun, as he was running third base for the final out. Suter comes in, he pitches a clean ninth, and he picked up the win to even the series at 1-1. Joaquin Andujar and Pete Vukovich were locked in a pitcher's duel in Game 3 until the 5th, when Willie McGee hit a 3-run home run. The Cardinals had a 2-1 to 7th off of Vukovich, off the RBI double by Lonnie Smith, and another shot by McGee, this time a solo. And McGee had himself a game with a couple defensive gems as well. The first one came while running down a deep drive by Molitor, and he robbed Gorman Thomas of a home run in the 9th inning. In the 7th, with 1 out, catcher Ted Simmons smoked a line drive of Andujar's kneecap, and he would be forced to leave the game. The Brewers would load the bases, but closer Bruce Suter, that guy was a beast. He would, throwing forkballs all day. He got the final outs of the inning. Cecil Cooper accounted for the Brewers' lone runs with a 2-run homer off Suter in the 8th, but it wasn't enough as St. Louis won 6-2, and they took a 2-1 lead in the series. Game 4 in Milwaukee, 6 innings. It looks like the Cards are going to choke the Brewers out here and take a commanding 3-1 lead in the series. Cards hurler Dave LaPointe, who, if you remember, was part of that deal for Simmons and Fingers and Vukovich. He holds the Brew Crew to 3 hits in 6 innings, while the Cardinals' offense scored early for a 5-1 lead. 2 of those runs, they came in the second on a crazy 2-run sac fly by Tom Herr. And it played at both Willie McGee and Ozzie Smith. And folks, you got to see this thing. Push pause, go to your Google machine, and you'll see Ogilvy takes too much time getting that ball back into the infield. And then Ozzie, and his heads-up base running, he takes advantage of the lackadaisical defensive play. And quite honestly, folks, that's why he's the wizard. But in the 7th, the Cardinals imploded. With 1 out, Ben Ogilvy reaches first when the solid gold-gloving first baseman Keith Hernandez tosses an errant ball wildly to LaPointe, covering the bag on a ground ball. So man on first, Jeff Lanty came in relief, and he got the next out, which should have been, the final one if not for that error. And the Brewers would make Hernandez and the Cardinals pay for that miscue. They scored 6 runs on an RBI double from Cooper and RBI singles by Yount and Gorman Thomas. Milwaukee never looked back, and they won 7-5, tying the series at 2. Game 5 at County Stadium and saw a pitching rematch of Game 1. Mike Caldwell versus Bob Force. And Caldwell would get a second win of the series with a 6-4 victory. The offense was paced by AL MVP Robin Yount, who dropped dong on Force's lips. And the Brewers are now headed back to Busch Stadium for 2 possible games with a 3-2 advantage. Game 6, it was hampered by 2 rain delays that lasted over 2.5 hours. St. Louis is able to stave off elimination with a 13-1 blowout. Catcher Darryl Porter and Keith Hernandez both had 2-run bombs, and Hernandez had an RBI single as well as rookie pitcher Jack Stuper, with the help from the rain delay, was able to go the distance. He gave up only 4 hits in the whole game. On the flip side of the coin, Brewers starter Don Sutton, who had ironically benefited greatly from blowout wins, thanks to Harvey's Wallbangers, he didn't fare so well with the rain delay. Which leads us to Game 7. Busch Stadium, October 20th, 1982. And once again, Joaquin Adahar, this tender knee, he'd be taking on AL Cy Young winner Pete Vukovich. And the game was deadlocked at 0s until the bottom of the 4th, when the Cardinals struck first, taking a 1-0 lead on a Lonnie Smith RBI single. Ben Ogilvie was tied up for Milwaukee in the 5th with a solo shot. And the Brewers would then take a 3-1 lead in the 6th when Jim Gantner scores on an error. When Jim Gantner scores on an error, and Cecil Cooper drives in the sac fly. In the bottom half of the 6th, the wheels of history are set in motion as Vukovich is in trouble. With 1 out, the Wizard singles. Lonnie Smith pushes him to 3rd with a double. And Harvey Kuenn, he's seen enough. He goes to the bully for southpaw Bob McClure, who by Game 7, he's absorbed a loss in Game 1. He picked up saves in Game 4 and 5. So he's putting in work, and fatigue is a factor here now. This is Game 7, of course. And this is also where some of Harvey's tactics are a little questionable, to be fair. McClure comes in and intentionally walks Gene Tennis to load the bases with 1 out to face Keith Hernandez. Now, sidebar, if hindsight is 20/20, well then here's what I'm laying down for you to pick up. I'm not sure why you're making a pitching change to intentionally walk someone right out of the bullet. I've never been in favor of bringing in a reliever to intentionally walk the first batter. The guy on the mound already should surely be able to throw 4 fucking balls. Having a relief pitcher come in to do that can, alter the mindset, the guy's whole makeup from the jump. You tell relievers all year, don't put guys on, don't put guys on, don't put guys on. Now you're like, come on in the game, put this first guy on and get the next one. That's how, look, I disagree with Harvey on that move. Also, why are you walking anyone to face Keith Hernandez in his prime badass years? I mean, certainly, why are you walking 1982 Gene Tennis to get to him? It's not like this is 1972 Gene Tennis. I'm just not crazy about that move there. But that's just me. That's just my opinion. Who the hell am I? Right? I wouldn't mind knowing what your opinion is, though. But for now, I digress. So, of course, Hernandez ties the game with a 2-run single. George Hendricks would drive in Keith with a single to put the Cards up 4-3. St. Louis would get 2 more runs in the 8th on RBI singles by Steve Braun and eventual World Series MVP Darryl Porter. And it would be the Cardinals in Game 7 of the 1982 MLB season that would end the amazing run of one of the most explosive single-season offenses in the history of the game. And, folks, they were exciting. I loved and respected that team so much. I loved watching them play and just mashing the ball out of the stadium. It was fun watching it. You know, it's like run and shoot NFL, you know, like the old Houston Oilers, man. It was fun. But it was also the first time in my life as an 11-year-old baseball fan that I learned exactly how valuable pitching was to a championship team. I learned lessons from that 82 season. I remember digging into my encyclopedias and studying championship pitching after watching the mighty Brewers fail. And I began to notice it's much easier to win with great pitching making up for mediocre hitting than it is vice versa. The 2017 Astros, 1982 Milwaukee Brewers, they are the only two pennant-winning clubs to have such a wide chasm between adjusted ERA and OPS to benefit the bats. Both of those teams carried their pitching struggles into the World Series, but while the Astros continued to rake, the Brewers, they just ran out of gas. The Brewers came up 3 innings, 9 outs short, and one has to wonder if the presence of a healthy Fingers could have made the difference. He probably would have, given all the hours that, or all the innings that McClure was, the innings and the number of pitches that McClure was coming in, and, you know, high leverage situations. It probably would have given Keene like this, you know, Slayton, McClure, Fingers trio on the back end. And we can only imagine if Fingers would have been healthy on that team. You know, and let's be honest, the Cardinals' defense was amazing in that World Series. I mean, they made some of the most amazing plays, especially on the carpet in St. Louis. But that 1982 Brewers, they were a team that overcame adversity at every turn. They, you know, from winning that final regular season game in Baltimore after getting blasted the first 3 games to win the AL East, and then overcoming an 0-2 start in the ALCS to win 3 straight games versus the Angels, which, of course, you know, set up the infamous Sun Series with the Cardinals, you know, with the Brewers falling just 9 outs short of that city's first World Series championship. The city of Milwaukee, it still held a parade following that World Series, celebrating the journey of a team that they will never forget, nor will I. The citizens of Milwaukee to this day, they always tell Paul Molitor that the 82 team is their favorite Brewers team of all time, to which Molly will usually reply, yeah, I love that team too. We always thought we had, you know, one more run in us to get back there. I hope one day we are replaced as everyone's favorite team around here by a team that actually brings home that World Series title for this city. And folks, I think that's where I'm going to wrap this puppy up. I hope you enjoyed listening as much as I enjoyed telling it. And I was a huge fan of this team, even though they broke my 11-year Orioles heart. They were hard not to respect. I mean, it's not like they're the Yankees or the Red Sox, right? I'm just kidding. But no. Gallup, Molly, Cooper, Ogilvy, Fingers, even Pete Vukovich, a.k.a. Clu Haywood. I mean, just an exciting, fun team to watch. I've never covered a team here at Backwards K-Pod that came up short in the World Series quest on a show yet. So this story was challenging in its own way for me to put it together. Again, thanks for spending your time here with me. You could have been doing a million of other things, but instead, you spent it with me, and for that, I'm eternally grateful. There are so many things out there about the 1982 Harvey's Wallbangers related. If you want to go down that rabbit hole, there are plenty of books. I saw a signed baseball for sale by every member of the 1982 Harvey Wallbangers for $300 on Amazon. I saw signed programs. There are videos of dudes like Robin Yount, Gorman Thomas, Bob Uecker, who is truly, pound for pound, the funniest guy in baseball. You know, there's all these videos of these dudes and more recounting that glorious season on YouTube. And by all means, take a look. A lot of stuff there, a lot of great stories. And you can tell that clubhouse was very, very close. So, folks, you can find me on Facebook at the Let's Talk Baseball Podcast Network group page. The show Twitter's handle is back_K_podcast. And please, remember to rate and review, follow and download, all that good stuff. That keeps me doing what I like to do, baby. And just like the hydro, I chopped the head off one shit. Did I just say hydro? That's a Freudian slip, right? And just like the hydra, I chopped the head off one show and another one appears in its place. Next week, I'll be telling the story of former Orioles icon manager, Mr. Earl Weaver. Probably the most influential person in my life when I was a kid. He really had an impact on how I look at the world and what it takes to win. Life lessons I could never unlearn. But hey, that's another story for another pod here at Backwards K-Pod, where we collect ball players and their stories. Parents, if you see your kid sitting on the couch with their nose in the phone looking bored AF, take him or her outside and play a game of catch. Thank y'all for coming out. God bless and win the day.